The story behind Squadron 42 has introduced to Star Citizen a number of ships inspired by World War II aircraft. Enter the proxy for the torpedo bomber, the Anvil Gladiator. But how useful is it right now in the game? I'm Forrester, and in this video I review the Star Citizen ship, the Anvil T8C Gladiator. Star Citizen is currently in alpha testing, with the Gladiator as one of the flyable ships. Described as a bomber, the Gladiator can be flown solo or as a dual-seater with a turret gunner behind. For those of you who've seen other ship reviews on this channel, you'll recognise the usual format for this video. It's split into 5 sections, starting with a ship tour, assessing combat performance, reviewing handling and visibility, looking at the operating costs before finally summarising. I've included timestamps in the video description to help navigate to each part of the review, and if you're one of the 80% of people watching who isn't yet subscribed to the channel, you may wish to subscribe to be notified of future videos. Part 1. Ship Tour. And in line with other small craft, there really isn't much to say for the Gladiator. Both the pilot and the gunner access their seat just below the nose, which drops down the chair and takes you up into the cockpit or the turret itself. Part 2. Combat Performance. Starting with armament, your stock Gladiator comes armed with 2 fixed size 3 weapons, usually Mantis ballistic repeaters for the pilot, and another 2 size 3 weapons, usually Panther repeaters in a turret usable by another player. But of course, the main armament of this ship is the missile armament, and the Gladiator comes armed with 8 size 2 missiles underslung on the wings, and a centre missile bay that carries 4 size 5 missiles, or torpedoes depending on what you want to call them. Starting with the missile armament, none of them are game-breakingly powerful like you might find on an Eclipse or a Retaliator, but the damage output of the size 5 missiles is still relatively high and will do a decent job on medium-sized ships. But the 8 size 2 missiles give a clue as to how the Gladiator is a little different. Whereas the other bombers tend to fire their munitions at range and then try to escape, the Gladiator is a little more heavily armed and a little more nimble, and thus able to do a little brawling. To be clear, the Gladiator isn't as speedy as many dedicated fighters, but it's no slouch either, and the inclusion of size 3 weapons means it has a reasonable punching power, especially if you have somebody in the turret. And with 2 size 1 shield generators, the Gladiator isn't defensively strong, but isn't any weaker than the majority of fighters. The turret itself is mounted high up, which gives for generally good firing arcs, although you're likely to spend quite a lot of time shooting at the pilot's target, as the Gladiator is nimble enough to keep nose on target fairly well. All in all, you might expect a ship marked as a bomber to be fragile and hands-off, but the Gladiator lets you get in and amongst the action if you want to, and is more than capable of holding its own. Part 3. Handling and Visibility. So, as already alluded to, the Gladiator is surprisingly nimble for what you might expect, feeling similar in handling style to the Super Hornet. But you'll notice the difference in speed, as the Gladiator comes in at a more limited 155 meters per second combat speed. That means that if you do decide to go in and brawl with the Gladiator, you'll want to make use of your strafing skills to be constantly on the move in every direction. That said, the lower SCM speed means that the Gladiator handles very predictably, and that's noticeable when planetside. It feels really comfortable to fly, and you can fairly instinctively know how it'll respond. And that's a really important feature when you're learning a new ship in Star Citizen. Visibility is a little less good, however. You can probably see everything you need to, out to the front, out to the sides, and even above, but there's been a conscious design choice made to make you feel a little more hunkered down, or as Deli in my org put it, to make you very focused to stay on target, which feels appropriate. Quantum travel in the Gladiator is surprisingly quick owing to the inclusion of a military-grade quantum drive. That's a real plus, although it will hamper your range a little, covering about half of the Stanton system. Part 4. Operating costs. The Gladiator does carry some larger missiles, so be prepared for rearming costs in particular to ramp up into the thousands. That said, if you're chaining together multiple combat contracts before you have to rearm, you should comfortably still see a profit in the Gladiator. And that's because this bomber is able to complete a variety of combat contracts, ranging from low risk all the way to much higher risk bounties, as well as claim jumper contracts if you're particularly skilled. There's no internal cargo storage for either trading or box delivery contracts, however, so you'll largely be confined to running combat. But if you have a Gladiator, you're probably okay with that. It'll be interesting to see in the future if there are swappable modules that use the payload bay for something else, such as a small cargo bay. Part 5. The Verdict. The Gladiator is a bit of an unexpected gem, in that it fills a fairly unique role. There are other heavy or stealth bombers in-game, but the Gladiator is much more of an immediate combat asset, offering something between an Eclipse and a Hornet. It's able to get involved in the melee, leveraging those missile stores, but not quite so reliant on them as other bombers. The inclusion of a turret gunner is a nice feature, as it will allow pilots to bring across friends who may be interested in Star Citizen in a much easier role to get into. Plus, for advanced co-pilots, there are multifunction displays in the turret seat, which could be incredibly helpful in the future. However, the Gladiator is always going to trade off performance against some of the dedicated fighters. At 2 million Alpha UEC, or $165 for pledge, the Gladiator does come in at a more expensive price point than the Hornet, although a fairer comparison might be the dual-seater Super Hornet, where the Gladiator does come in a little cheaper. The pledge price is probably a little steep, unless you know exactly what niche the Gladiator falls into, and that's absolutely your bag. Otherwise, the in-game price is fairly reasonable, and should be attainable for most. And for a combat ship at the 2 million UEC price point, it's probably between the Gladiator and the Super Hornet, both of which are different enough to justify a choice. So, if you're into the bombing, missile type gameplay, the Gladiator might be a good choice to buy in-game, especially as a potential stepping stone to the more expensive Eclipse. But do you agree? What do you think of the Gladiator? Let me know by sharing your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, you may also be interested in my review of the Aegis Eclipse. Outside of that, if you're looking for a group who plays Star Citizen regularly, I've included a link to my organisation in the video description. Thank you for watching.